Good evening and welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. You're watching Debate Night. Tonight I'm Kevin Castley, your host. I'm debating Unironic Ancap over here. And we do debates. The way how it works is we'll have a few minutes for opening statements, and then we're going to have an open sort of conversation, and then we'll have some closing statements near the end. Because Unironic Ancap is the challenger, he'll get to go first. And basically, if you're interested in debating me, you can send me a DM over on Twitter and we'll schedule a time for debates. And so with that, we welcome Unironic Ancap here. Feel free to kind of introduce yourself, and then you can go into your opening statements.
All right. How do I sound?
You sound good.
I sound great. Awesome. Thanks. So do you, man. One, I'd like to thank Kevin here for, bringing me onto his little show. How many people we got watching right now?
It says 11 here.
Really? Wow, that's a lot. So not really. So anyways, I kind of wanted to come on here and discuss a couple things that Kevin had said on Twitter, actually. One of the biggest being it was yours, and I believe Net7 is his name. Your guys' claim that anarchists are the equivalent to Nazis because of our beliefs on democracy, and I'd love to hear your input on that a little bit more.
Oh, sure. So yeah, you're welcome to bring up any sort of tweets. If you send me links to specific tweets, I can also bring them up on the screen as well. I can't entirely speak for Net7, and I'm sure some of those I didn't even see myself, but I know in the past I've compared anarchists and libertarians foreign policy essentially to Nazi sympathy in the past, for sure. So but if you had any other sort of opening statements or sort of anything like that,
can you go a little bit more into specifics on that with their foreign policy? Go ahead. I'm intrigued by this. I want to hear.
Yeah, sure. So we have a cancer in our society and our civilization at large across the West right now, which is essentially relativism. It's the idea that, well, every culture is their own culture, every country is their own country, everybody's sovereign. And if you got Nazis or communists or something over there, well, that's their business. And if those people are led by a dictator or a brutal tyrant, that's their business and that's their lot in life. And sucks to be them, but we're not going to do anything. We're just going to, sit here, even though we have tremendous military power and everything, but we're not going to do anything. And we're just going to sit back as the forces of darkness essentially subsume Eurasia and then inevitably come for us in North America. But we're not going to do anything about it because we're like anarchists or we're libertarians or whatever. And we view all states as equally bad. And there's definitely a problem with, I know you're an Ancap, right? And I've debated a couple of different Ancaps. There's this issue with anarcho-capitalists where they essentially have a failure to differentiate between degrees of magnitude of state, overreach between America and North Korea. They tend to describe America in ways that are oftentimes even more authoritarian than what they would describe North Korea as. I mean, not with the people that I've debated, but I've seen it in other circles, including Ron Paul, where he'll say, "Well, they have legal weed, bro. America doesn't have legal weed, man." And so,
I'd love to see some of this happening. Someone actually, seriously on a serious note, saying that America is worse than North Korea or whatever. I think that's a pretty ridiculous argument. What reason do we have? Why do we have this obligation as America to help those people, for example? Stop the spread of those ideologies. There's different cultures that, I believe if they want to live how they want to live, they can. Why is that our job?
So do you think North Koreans getting gassed in gulags want to live that way?
No, I don't.
So then I don't understand this idea that liberty and fighting back against state power and everything is this good as long as it's within America, but fighting state power abroad is bad. That seems weird.
I'm sure a lot of people would agree. A lot of libertarians would agree with me when I say that, if you want to privately fund a military and privately hire people and go spread freedom in fucking North Korea, sure, go ahead and do that. But the issue is that you are forcing people to pay for endless warfare that realistically has nowhere to go other than just, enrich the military industrial complex. I mean, the U.S. military knew for years that we had like no real goal in Afghanistan, and we knew it was an unwinnable war.
It's not unwinnable.
It is unwinnable.
It's unwinnable with Obama.
The upper ranks of the U.S. military have deemed it an unwinnable war.
Yeah, under Obama and under Donald Trump. Yeah, yes, that's because Donald Trump and Obama refused to in any way stay the course whatsoever. You can look at officials in the Pentagon during the Bush administration, look at their statements. They didn't describe it as unwinnable. That's Obama and essentially weakness that trickled down. So again, they're limiting the confines of what's practical. It is unwinnable if you're barely willing to throw any resources at it. That's true. That's totally true. Like with Obama's style, you could do it a million years and you wouldn't win.
How long has the United States been involved military-wise in the Middle East?
How is this relevant?
How is it relevant? I'm saying that we have been fighting this bullshit war on terror, the war on terror specifically since what, 2001?
Okay, but Afghanistan's not even Middle East. Like technically it's Central Asia. So like what does the U.S. involvement, say, in Lebanon have to do with Afghanistan? These are separate.
Yeah. Well, yes, Middle East and Iraq and Afghanistan, if we're going to be fucking picky. Like our military involvement there has gotten fucking nowhere. We spent trillions of dollars. We've cost thousands of U.S. and non-combatant lives in those countries, and we have gotten nowhere. The social policies or the fucking diplomacies and shit like that you're advocating for, and the intervention in the rest of the world doesn't fucking work, dude.
Then can you explain why Saddam is 6 feet under right now?
Can you explain to me why fucking Iraq is a third world country right now, dude? Do they have a functioning
Iran has been meddling in Iraq for decades, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bomb Iran, dude. Like, I want to deal with the problem. The problem in Iraq is Iran. It's not with Iraq.
No, Iraq is just an example, dude.
Oh, okay. Well, we could do that. We can run the gamut. We can go to all kinds of countries. We could look at Chile. We could look at South Korea. We can run the gamut. We can go everywhere, and you can just say, "Oh, well, that's just one country." Every time that I prove you wrong, oh, that's just one country. We can do that. I'm happy to do that. Let's look at another.
We can continue to say that's just one country because I mean, literally none of these countries we've invaded are stable by any means, and we keep blaming it on Iran.
Is Iraq more stable today than it was under Saddam? Objectively, yes. Is South Korea, or I should say, is Japan more stable today than it was in 1941? Yes. Is Germany more stable today than it was in 1938? Yes. So this idea that interventionism, that invasion, incursion, etc., doesn't make things more stable. It misses the fact of how unstable things were before. So, for example, Iraq invaded Kuwait for oil, invaded Iran for oil, blood, territory, etc., fired Scuds at Israel, top U.S. ally in the region. What I don't understand is, like, so you've got as your profile picture right now the grave of John McCain. John McCain, of course, was a war hero of the United States of America. Now, you don't need to agree with his politics, mind you, to respect his service. I find your profile picture there to actually be severely disrespectful. But what I don't understand,
you can find it disrespectful. That was the intent.
Well, yeah, I figured it probably was. I figured you probably changed your profile picture like that to piss me off. And it's like, I don't care. I see you guys on Twitter all the time and everything. I know how you guys feel about John McCain. The point is, at least you are kind of owning the meme that we always get at, which is like, if you're not in the military, you get called a coward. And if you are in the military, you get called a war criminal. At least you're straight up saying it doesn't really matter if you're in the military or not. You're just going to hate interventionists either way, right? So at least you're honest is what I gather. So.
No, I'm asking why it is U.S. soldiers' lives and U.S. taxpayers' responsibility to help these people.
It's not just Americas. I want Canada. I want the UK. I want France.
Right. But
I want Germany. I want all of NATO.
Why is it those countries? NATO probably is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about NATO and affiliated countries.
Now, why is it the job of the citizens of those NATO countries to help them spread freedom? Like, if you want to spread, if they want to like have a revolution and fucking overturn their government, I'll support them. Hell yeah, dude, do that. But that's not my fucking responsibility to fund their freedom, fund their push to freedom. Like,
you sound like such a committed anarchist right now. You're defending state power in North Korea, essentially.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
Not, no,
you oppose toppling those regimes. How are you an anarchist? Like, I'm more of an anarchist than you, honestly, at that point. You seem to defend the status quo worldwide.
When did I defend a state structure?
You don't want to do anything to topple North Korea. You're saying, oh, well, they can do a revolution if they want. Are you aware of the degree?
It's not my responsibility.
So it's anarchy for me, but not for thee. That's kind of your ideology. So you are a relativist, is what you're saying. You don't think that anarchy is something to be desired worldwide. It's just something for
I am completely fine with everyone worldwide having anarchism or living under anarchy, but you shouldn't have to rely on somebody else to fulfill that for you.
So you don't understand how North Korea is so entrenched in their security apparatus that it's literally impossible to do a revolution domestically there. It has to be from the outside.
What? All right, because you don't like my idea. What would you do for North Korea, for example?
Well, I've actually done many videos on the topic. I would take out their nuclear sites. I would take out their launchers. I would do a preemptive wave hitting their strategic assets, their command and control facilities, and then following that, I would conduct a conventional incursion with the goal of neutralizing the Korean People's Army and liberating the country from the Korean Workers' Party and establishing a Western-run temporary administrative zone for 20 to 30 years until the population can be fully de-Jucheized and introduced into unification with the South under capitalist liberal democracy.
Okay. That's interesting. So, obviously, you're probably aware that the way Korean culture is, they kind of view Kim Jong-un as like a god, right?
Well, the state media apparatus does that, and right. People bought into it. People genuinely believe it, but it's not. Did you say North Korean or Korean?
North Korea.
North Korean. Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about North Korea. Yeah. I figured you'd understand.
Yeah, well, some people have made the point before that Korean culture is inherently authoritarian, and that's why they would justify Kim when it's like, okay, but then explain South Korea. At least you're not doing that. So.
Oh my God. All right. Yeah, I guess. Let me hear what's your hard on with democracy, dude? Like, why are you down with the whole voting stuff, like democracy?
Well, because democracy is the least bad system of government out there, essentially. I'm not saying it's perfect, right? like there are problems with democracy. I believe in representative democracy. I don't believe in direct democracy, for example. Even though direct democracy is cool in small groupings, it doesn't work at a big level. Right. I support it because it is the best way to organize a sovereign state system. Now it's just like the same reason why I support, capitalism. It doesn't mean that I'm saying that capitalism is perfect. I've got a lot of criticisms of capitalism in theory, as well as a ton of criticisms of how it's actually run in Canada and the United States, for example. But even its ideal is still technically not as good as it might be possible to do down the road. But it is the best thing that we've discovered so far. I'm not saying that democracy is, it's the best thing that could ever exist in any structure of organisms anywhere in the universe. There might be something better 800 light years away that some alien civilization figured out. We just haven't discovered it yet. But it is the best thing of anything that's been posited so far in political thought over the last 10,000 years.
So you you think that, you know, all the NATO countries really should have this and kind of spread that around the world. People, you know, being able to vote for their electors and stuff like that, right? Representatives, like a representative democracy.
I actually want to expand NATO. I would ideally like to see, you know, not just NATO, but also Israel, Australia, South Korea, Japan, even India, if we can get some reforms happening there, would be great to add to the alliance. I'd more so say the Western Alliance, but most of that is NATO. So
what and obviously you're going to still need politicians in power that follow these same ideas, right? You know, want to continue to spread democracy, right?
Well, I would say if you're a politician and you say that democracy is good, it should be incumbent upon the media to ask you, well, what does democracy, what worth does it have here if you would say that democracy has no bearing, say, North Korea? So I don't think that you can actually call yourself a Democrat or even a liberal, and I'm using small d and small l in both of those cases, if you don't support the propagation of those values worldwide. You're essentially at that point a relativist.
Right. Hypothetically, though, let's say, so you move to America or whatever, and this whole neocon renaissance, I think you called it a renaissance at one point.
That's what I want. Yeah.
Right, that's what you want. So that happens, right? And then there's a bunch of neocons in power. And you start spreading this liberal representative democracy to the rest of the world. NATO achieves it, Israel, Poland, everyone, right? And
base.
What happens with when you're partway through and say a left wing or a populist left or populist right that was anti-war started speaking out and got into power and stopped that movement? What would you do?
Well, that's kind of what's actually happened in the first sort of resurgence of neoconservatism in the early 2000s. Following that, you had Obama and more notably Donald Trump that came in off of the back of basically Russian disinformation, this idea that America, there's nothing good about America. America should feel guilty and democracy's bad. America's the bad guy and all this. And a lot of people got duped and fell for it and everything. And it drastically undermined the project that Bush laid down and wound up meaning that a lot of people died somewhat in vain. A lot of money was spent almost as a sunk cost, essentially, because the leadership that came in and the political culture that emerged was so self-hating and so uncommitted to the project. And it was a massive boon to China and to Russia. That could very well happen again. And that's one of the reasons why I run this show, why I argue, you know, more than just getting people elected, what we need to do is have a really substantive and permanent change in the culture to where we are unapologetically Western and we are unapologetically interventionist. And so I think that foreign malfeasance, interference in the culture is always going to be a problem. We're more prone to that than our enemies because we have freedom and they don't. So we're easier to mess with. But that doesn't mean that we should give up our system. To answer your question, though, about what happens if they do get power, I believe was what you asked. Well, if they get power, then that would mean, unfortunately, a lot of the projects that would be undertaken wouldn't be followed through to their conclusion. So Iraq is an example. Afghanistan's an example right now. They're still both worlds better than they were under the Taliban and Saddam, respectively. But they could have been way better had we had a committed nation-building process there to not just take out the dictators, but to actually stabilize the countries and to forge them in the image of the West. And so it could happen. You're totally right. That could happen. That yo-yo hawking thing would happen. It's just what would happen afterwards? Well, after you pull out and everything, now the terrorists regroup. Now, instead of fighting you in Afghanistan or something, now they can focus on doing their next 9/11, and then they attack you again. And all those people that voted for the populist left, now after they see like, oh, their sister or cousin was killed in a terrorist attack because of the Taliban or something, now they all become hawks again, and then they vote for the neocons again. What I'm advocating for is instead of doing that oh, we go to war, then we pull out because it's been too long. Instead of that, and then we have to go back after they attack us again. Instead of that, I just want to finish the job. I want to end the endless wars by winning them once and for all. So that's my approach.
What in this like rubber banding of hockey, and I think you call it, or yo-yoing of hockey.
Yo-yoing, yeah.
When you lose that power and then it goes to someone that's, anti-war on the left or right.
Yeah.
What usually leads to that loss of power? Like, what's the build up to that?
Well, it's usually in the sense of, John McCain loses to Obama by a few points, or Mitt Romney runs. Well, I mean, the power was already lost at that point, but you see what I'm saying? It's usually in the form of an election where the new commander in chief acts on a platform that's favorable to America's enemies. So it's specifically in the West, but that's true throughout the democracies. It's usually an election is lost,
So basically they build up this power and then an election is lost, meaning that they had to have lost some kind of like cultural acceptance, or people just suddenly, well, elections are usually when someone looks at a candidate, they're going to say he looks like me, or they don't, or they like what I like, and that's what they're going to vote for. I don't want to like sound like a dick when I say this, but you and I both know that the vast majority of people that are voting realistically aren't 100% as read up on politics as you or I, right?
Oh, for sure. That's part of the reason why you have to bring these things home to people and say, look, do you like getting bombed in a terrorist attack? No, you should probably vote for somebody like Crenshaw or Haley, it's to bring it home to them.
What?
Like, because it's true. That's true for economics. That's true for really a lot of stuff. Most people aren't deeply involved in politics. And so they need sound bites. They need things that are, relatively easy to understand because they have busy lives focused on other areas. That's one of the things that's so great about our civilization, is that you can be the best that you want in your particular field, and you don't have to be an expert on everything to, have a view on things. People, that's one of the things, is that like I've had people criticize me and stuff before and say, oh, well, most of these ideas, they're only really a thing in think tanks. So like what you're trying to do here isn't really going to work or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but think tanks don't really reach very many people. So I'm trying to spread, in terms of my project here at YouTube, I'm trying to spread the hawk pill and make it digestible and even entertaining to the masses, in a way that has largely failed in the media war, which has been lost to Russia.
I think
with Russia Today, with all these brainlets on YouTube like Kyle Kulinski, Jimmy Dore, Nick Fuentes, etc. So
I think it failed, in the early 2000s. Mostly after like the Bush administration is when it kind of really started to collapse. I think you and I could agree, right? Around there. Like neoconservatism is like a mainstream idea in the U.S.
It went into hibernation. Yeah, it went into hibernation essentially.
Don't you think that like after Americans, seeing how terrible the war in Iraq and Afghanistan was going, and saw the toll of that war, don't you think that their opinion kind of changed? Because I guarantee if you started questioning everyday Americans today, they would say that they're not really for the wars in the Middle East. I think that you guys imagine there's this massive wave of support for neoconservatism because Toby Keith released a new, Go Get 'Em Boys country song about, talking about the American flag and
Toby Keith's pretty based. I've been a fan of him since I was like 4 years old or whatever.
Yeah, I liked his music until I was like 17, and then I kind of grew out of it, and I don't really listen to much country music now because but like I don't think that there was ever a massive rise in the neoconservative ideology to start with. I mean, we just had 9/11. Everyone was like really, really, upset. And the president at the time was like, hell yeah, guys, let's go get them. And everyone was like, woo. And Toby Keith released his song, right? but
Yeah, he had
like,
some really good bangers.
everyone was
Courtesy of
like,
Red, White, and Blue was pretty big.
everyone was like so adamant that like the United States of America, America, fuck yeah, dude, we're gonna go over there, we're gonna kick their ass, and we're gonna come home on the next day for dinner, right? But they realized that these wars are unwinnable. We have been over there since then. Since when did we invade Afghanistan? Because we went to war with Iraq in 2003.
Yeah, Afghanistan was shortly after 9/11, and then
It was like 2 months later.
Obama pulled the commitment. So in terms of the actual force that was applied there, it was the course of the Bush administration. Obama and Trump handled it like a joke. So when people say, "Oh, it's been 20 years or whatever," it's like, not really. It was about 7 years of actually a firm commitment over there. So
you're right, but it got to the point where people like Obama were elected because he was, talking about dialing back our involvement in the Middle East, and then Trump got a lot of support the same way because not he supported the military, but like he was also like, we're gonna bring them home. How Republicans, keep saying that, and that candidate, Obama, that was one of the biggest things was like hope. Like, we're gonna be better America kind of deal. And people were just sick of the fucking war that we had been in for, at that time, between 5 and 7 years between both countries. Like, people saw their brothers and their friends and shit just dying over there, and the support for the war ended. Like, the public really does not support our actions in the Middle East.
Well, that's because there's been a cultural campaign assisted by the enemies of America and the West at large. It's not just the thing in America. It happened in Canada too. Canada was committed to Afghanistan as well, and then Canada wound up pulling out. It was a complete and total travesty.
Because people don't support it anymore.
If you're talking about this as if it's an organic thing, but the fact of the matter is, not just the Russians, the Chinese are at this too, but it's primarily the Russians. They hype up on the internet and have been doing anti-American memes on the internet since the 90s. Like, they were in on disinformation warfare back before America and the American state even really knew what a computer was, essentially. Like, they knew they could use this to connive against our democracies. So they would, through their propaganda outlets and everything, and through their memes, turn people against our own national security and make people lose sight of, the prize, essentially, and get lost in this short-term degenerate selfishness and nihilism, essentially. And so you talk about, well, people saw people dying over there. It's like, yeah, people die in war. People also saw people die in 9/11. Are we really going to let the Taliban get away with that? So, I mean, because it seems to me like it seems to me like you want to surrender to the Taliban is what I'm getting.
Let them get away for what?
Well, in this case, September 11, 2001.
How many people died?
I'm not even talking about the humanitarian abuses they commit against their own people. I'm not even talking about that. America's reason for being there was to remove them from power.
Remove them from power. When did bin Laden die? He was, 12 or 14?
Well, I'm talking about the Taliban right now. Of course, it's part of the US.
Yeah. Okay.
Go after Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda's throughout the Middle East and southern Central Asia as well. They got bin Laden in Pakistan, for example. So, and actually, Pakistan's done a deal to support the Taliban as well. So, like, Pakistan's a big mess. So,
I don't know.
Like, do you not understand that if you leave there, they're going to be able to regroup and take the country back as a base and attack America again, or help another group attack America again, and then America will have to go back. And all those people you're talking about now that are anti-war or whatever, they're going to be pissed because they're going to see people dying in New York or Chicago or whatever, and they're going to want to go and kick ass and take names. Why, instead of doing the yo-yoing, why not have a longer term project that not only takes them out and removes them from power, but actually extinguishes them and turns these countries into allies, stable allies, and then you never have to do the war again over there? How about that?
I don't think you're gonna turn people into allies by bombing the shit out of their home, dude.
Well, I'm not saying to bomb Afghan civilians. I'm saying to
that's
go
what we've been doing that.
No, that's what the Taliban does. America doesn't go and purposefully bomb civilians in Afghanistan. Do civilians die in collateral damage? Yes. They're not targeted. To imply that America's targeting civilians is gross propaganda, man. I'm going to need proof that America targets civilians. So,
hang on. No, like, how many people died in 9/11?
Almost 3,000.
Right. Now, what's the death toll for civilians and non-combatants in these wars in say Iraq right now? Like, what's the death toll for civilians and non-combatants from this war?
Well, in Iraq, as a result of the coalition forces and everything, it was approximately around 20,000. As a result of the Iranian-backed insurgency, we're talking like well over 200,000 people. So Iran is responsible for the vast majority of the deaths that took place during what we think of as the Iraq War. Not to mention that after Obama pulled out, it created basically a power vacuum that allowed ISIS to take over like half the country. So. Not to mention that what you're missing here too is, so we're talking about a death toll of about 20,000 as a result of the U.S. taking out Saddam. Most of the deaths in that war are a result of the insurgency that happened afterwards. But let's say we left Saddam in power. Saddam was killing between 2,500 people a month and 3,500 people a month every month for 30 years. So if we left him in power for another 6 months, he would have killed as many people just from his own state oppression as died during the liberation campaign. I'm not saying nobody dies in the liberation war. No war is perfect. But in terms of relative degrees of death, leaving him in power for another 20 years would have seen millions dead. Not to mention they probably would have started a war against another country. Maybe they would have invaded Kuwait again. Maybe they would have invaded Iran again. Maybe they would have attacked Israel again. Who knows what would have happened? And when we know that he was working with terrorists too. So he definitely would have played host to other terrorists. He might even have played host to, perhaps Al-Qaeda again, or perhaps even ISIS. It's a tough one. ISIS mostly was able to get off of the ground because of the U.S. pulling out of Iraq, though. So, it's a tough hypothetical game. All that I can say for certain is that if he had been left in power, not only would, hundreds of times as many people be dead today in the region, but it's almost certain that America would have been attacked again, either by Iraq attacking America's allies or playing host to terrorists that attacked America 9/11 style. So this idea that you can just pretend the world doesn't exist and pull out everywhere and then the world will forget that you exist. No, the world won't forget about America. The world hates America. Well, the terrorists hate America, I should say.
Why do they hate America?
Because America is the vanguard of freedom and liberty and refuses to bow down to Sharia law, essentially. So, for example, you have Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda hates America because America stands in solidarity with, the moderates in Saudi Arabia, such as the House of Saud, that basically...
They just had someone killed, didn't they?
Who?
The Saudi government. Yeah.
Oh, they have people killed all the time.
Yeah, they killed that reporter and then lied about it on an international level. But go ahead.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood, dude. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So anyway, so the House of Saud is the moderates. They're pro-Western, and they keep at bay the radical Wahhabist clerics in their country that would love to overthrow them and establish an Islamic State, for example, like ISIS. And so Al-Qaeda is at war with Saudi Arabia and America because they hate the fact that Saudi Arabia is reforming to be more Western, and they hate the fact that the United States is there and has a presence in Saudi Arabia, and they despise America's ideology of liberal capitalism. And so this idea that we can just let the world just fall to the ideologies that hate us and pretend like they won't come for us after that, and that we won't be on a weaker standing after that, even if you didn't care about anybody outside your own borders, you'd still have to recognize that having the world be states that are in your own image, that share your ideology more or less, is better than letting the world fall to communism or fascism or Islamism or whatever, right? Like you would understand that your own security is dependent on the world basically being more stable and secure and amicable to your system, right? But you don't believe in the American state, though, is what I gather, right? Like you call yourself an anarchist, right?
I recognize people's rights to live as an individual. Yes, I don't believe that the state is legitimate. I think it's a criminal organization.
And so you regard the American state as a criminal organization.
Not just the American state, the state in general.
So you regard all states as criminal, but you're able to recognize that some states are worse than others, though, right?
Yes and no. I think government is inherently just bad, or oppressive would be a better word. So I mean, oppression at any level is bad. But yeah, I would say that there's a difference between like, you being like just murdered and you being tortured and then murdered. I guess one's worse than the other. But go ahead.
So I guess in this example, we're comparing America to a murderer versus North Korea who tortures before they kill somebody. I guess that's what we're getting at.
Yes.
That's kind of funny. But so you don't believe in a state. You don't believe in the ethos of the state. My question to you, I guess I would ask, have you ever read Thomas Hobbes before? Anything from Thomas Hobbes, like even a paragraph?
I'll be honest. No, I haven't.
Okay. Because I would suggest you look into the Leviathan, for example, because in it, Thomas Hobbes goes through a thought experiment. He doesn't say this was a real thing. He just says if there was no government, no state or anything, humans would be in what he describes as a state of nature. And in that state, it's basically there's no rules, anything goes, and there's nobody to police anything, and there's nobody to call if anything goes wrong. And he describes that state as that condition of existence. He describes it as nasty, short, brutish, and poor. That's what characterizes life in that. And he argues that that's not even a thing that would happen, because if that state were to ever emerge, everybody would be like, well, this sucks, and they would all gather around and let a king rule them, or form a sovereign council or something, or Congress or something. And that humans, basically the point that he's getting at is that human nature is depraved, that we are sick if we're left to our own devices. We are sick and cruel and sadistic and evil, and that it's not to say that the state is some perfect loving being or whatever. It's to say that the state is necessary to save us from our own worst aspects, and that's what Thomas Hobbes gets at in the Leviathan. And so he argues that humans covenant voluntarily, in essence, into these social contracts where we have leaders, we have rulers that keep order, and we obey them, and in return, we are protected by them, that sort of thing. And so without that, we would be in a state of nature. Now, in his example, he's not considering an international system. He's just saying hypothetically. The problem that I also have with human nature in an anarchist system is that even if you were to have an anarchist society emerge, not only would it be faced with, well, how do you police the worst instincts among us, but that it would also be immediately taken over by a different state, like, say, Canada or Russia or something, or China. So my questions for you, I guess, are twofold, which would be, one, do you believe that human nature, I guess, is essentially depraved, or are you more optimistic about human nature? And the second is, how would that system even survive, given that we have other states in the world order and that they would invade you? So,
I'm sorry, I'm incredibly high right now. I think you and Ace actually had a conversation about that. You don't smoke weed because you're a homophobe, right?
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. You see, the thing is, that Ace dude, he kind of had a mega lame attempt at trolling, because if he had just let it go like 8 minutes or something, I think a lot of people would have thought it was more potent, but it drew on for like 28 minutes or whatever. My advice to you is to probably not start that now, because it's already kind of mega lame. Like, it was mega lame when he did it, because it was also his genuine views, and he went on way too long with it. If you start the trolling sort of thing now, yeah, it's
in his defense, though,
low
like,
energy.
That was like one of your most viewed videos. I think the most viewed video by a long shot on your channel. And and those views weren't by people that liked you, dude. There's a lot of people.
Still, dude, that's still views for me, dude. Like, I literally don't care, like, because I put out this content regardless of how many views it gets, right?
And I saw your Hawk Talk, whatever you want to call it. Those at the Hawks chat is one that you guys got me into, which was pretty cool, by the way. Thanks. But like,
yeah, we have a group chat. You know that exists.
Yeah,
I guess that's a W for you, I guess, now.
Yeah,
you know what
one
it is.
For me. Yeah. But you guys took that so fucking seriously, dude. Like, the one guy in your Hawks chat was like, "Oh, well, I was in the army and we didn't do that." Like, you guys got so upset about something that was obviously an elaborate shit post that you kind of fell into.
Well, it was a pretty lame attempt at trolling, though. Like I said, I mean, because we know his actual views are mostly what he was saying there, and he was also high as hell and probably drunk, and he went on way too long. And
how do you know that was Ace?
And there was a lot of well, I mean, he said it was some dude who got banned or whatever. It honestly doesn't really matter. If it wasn't Ace, all that means is that Ace is still a coward who can't debate me, basically. But I think that a lot of people, when they saw that, by the way, I will say right now, just for the record, it is kind of a smart tactic, because you don't have good answers for the questions that I posed, to bring out some random crap that's kind of topical and people like drama. I get it. Everybody likes drama. I'm just saying, just for the record.
I've just got a few things I wanted to talk to.
I don't think you have an answer to my question about human nature or what's to stop a foreign power from invading. So unless you feel like you want to answer those. So.
Sorry, I was taking a hit.
Because it kind of looks like you're flailing and failing right now. So what do you have to say to that, Unironic Ancap?
I don't think I'm failing. I'm having a pretty good time, actually.
Oh, yeah.
You having a good time?
Well, I get views, I get subs, and sometimes people compensate me, so I'm having a pretty good time.
What else do you do for hobbies?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I apparently I live rent free in the head of a lot of anarchists, so I guess that's a hobby of mine.
That would be a hobby of them constantly looking at you. That would just be you existing. Is existence a hobby for you?
Well, no, they're triggered by my mere existence. So
I don't think they are. I find you funny.
No, I do think you guys really got triggered by the neocons and the Hawks over on Twitter. I think it's pretty clear. So
no,
you're like, how can these people? Well, not you, but like some of them are like, how can these people even exist? How can there be young Hawks and neocons?
Yeah, because you grew up in the age of Ron Paul, dude.
Ron dumber than Jake Paul is brainlet. He's been around a long time. He's been dumb and cringe for like decades. Like, when you mean the age of Ron Paul, you mean when he got like 2% in an election or something? Like, the dude's not a very prominent political figure. I've seen him on Alex. I've seen his like Liberty Talk and all this kind of stuff. He gets like a few. Dude, so wait. What do you mean the age of Ron Paul? Did he ever get anywhere near?
I mean, the 2008 and the 2012 era.
Yeah, and who won those elections? Obama and both of them. I'm not a fan of Obama, but you could say that was the age of Obama, not the age of Ron Paul.
But I think that was the birth of the modern liberty movement.
Yeah, but most people have no idea what that even is. Like, the age of Ron Paul. That's was they even mean? Like the dude gets like 1% in an election because nobody votes for the Libertarians or whatever. Like I'm not. I guess he's still a registered Republican. I'm not 100% sure what the deal with that is. But it's like, look, I don't like Obama. It would be fair to say that you could say that that was the age of Obama. I don't like Ron Paul. Definitely not the age of Ron Paul. The age of Ron Paul. When was the last time the Libertarian Party won a presidential election, dude? Like most people forgot that Ron Paul existed. We know he's some memes. We know that they had that ad where they were talking about North Korea and legal weed and stuff like that and everything. Ron Paul has never, like, I got news. Outside of his own district, he's never really been a big force in American politics. He's always been a meme. So
he, again, like when you look at Ron Paul with the modern liberty movement that's, been growing, especially over the last 2 years, that it's rooted in his message, the stuff that Ron Paul did.
So you guys went from 1% to 3% of the electorate, is what you're saying. So Liberty Gang rising, right?
How'd that McCain administration go?
Well, he got within 8 points of Obama. How many points of Obama did Ron Paul get within? Oh, that's right, like 80 or something. Like the dude's not a viable political force. Like you guys are a meme. Everybody thinks like, and it doesn't matter if you're liberal or conservative watching this, by the way. Everybody who's not an Ancap or a libertarian or whatever thinks of you guys as like just meme fodder, essentially, because you guys aren't good.
In what way?
Wait, really? Like Ron Dumber Than Jake Paul is a total meme because he'll talk a big game about liberty and all this, but then he'll do essentially apologetics for the terrorists, and he'll take the side of Vladimir Putin over America. So he's a meme. He's also kind of a seditious meme. I also find it kind of funny how he'll do like the 7-Eleven was a part-time jobs memes, talking about like how Bush did 9/11, that kind of stuff and everything. That you guys aren't a serious political movement, right? Like because for all the stuff that you can say about neocons and stuff, neocons got real power. When was the last time libertarians ever had power? Like it's not a thing that happens. So
that's fair. It's a fair argument.
Like, and again, I will point out for the record, we're like 10 minutes on right now, but you still haven't answered the question about human nature or how you would stop an anarchist society without a state from being invaded by a statist society with a state. So,
I don't have an answer for you.
Well, there we go. I guess that's 2 W's for me. 2 W's for the Hawk taking W's online. So
I don't think that's a W.
Well,
what was the first W?
The first W was you couldn't answer my question about human nature.
Oh.
The second W was you couldn't answer my question about how an anarchist society wouldn't be invaded by a statist society.
Oh, okay. I'm struggling to keep track here.
Yeah, another dub for your boy, the ghoul right here.
What?
Another dub.
What kind of social policies do you have, buddy?
It kind of depends on what we're talking about.
Social views, like your view on like drugs and alcohol and guns and things like that.
Sure. So I support the Second Amendment. Wish we had the Second Amendment in Canada. Support gun rights, gun ownership, that kind of stuff. I think that, my friend Wyatt is like a Canadian, sort of hawkish conservative. He has said before, that gun rights are the sort of thing where it's like, if you take gun rights away, well, what's to stop the government from taking away, car rights or anything else? So I think gun rights are pretty important. On drugs, I think weed being legal isn't really an issue, though I would note that if you are somebody who is predisposed to schizophrenia, you have about a 3% higher rate of developing schizophrenia if you smoke weed. But apart from that, I don't have an issue with weed being legal. Anything beyond weed should be kept illegal. That should be pretty self-evident. And of course, I argued that in my debate with Clint of Liberty Lockdown. Additionally, you had asked about, there was one other thing. Oh, alcohol. Alcohol is something that, like, it's so pervasive in society now that it would be very hard to criminalize. And so the best thing to do about alcohol would be to, try to change the culture in a way. And we have been making gains on this, where drunk driving isn't cool, and alcoholism is seen as something that people should get help for. So. And those are my views. What are your views on all those things?
When it comes to social policies, obviously, I mean, you can do what you want, just kind of do it at your place and kind of leave me alone, kind of deal. But I'm okay with whatever. If you want to ruin your life with drugs, you go do it, champ. I mean that's your fucking life.
So you don't think that infringes on, like, if they've got kids or something and they ruin their own family, you don't see that as aggressing upon the children, for example?
I do. It's a shitty thing to do. I'm not saying it's not, but like, just expecting me to go around and clean up everyone's fucking act, or me to fund that being done, or forcing these arbitrary rules like, oh, well, you could have a kids and ruin their life. I mean, I get it. It's a shit thing, but why is it my job to go and stop all the bad in the world? Why do I have to be the fucking policeman?
So I've got a question for you then. This is the question that I think I asked Keith, and I know I asked Clint. How does somebody exercise their liberty when they are addicted to a substance?
That's their right. They are using their liberty to do that. If you choose, it's personal responsibility, dude. You know that stuff's going to you're going to get addicted to heroin or crack or meth, but you have the liberty to do that. That's your right. It's your fucking body, man. If you want to go and smoke crack, go smoke crack.
So you don't
quote me on that. Somebody quote that on Twitter, please.
Yeah, you don't regard drug dealers or anything as essentially aggressing upon society at large, or families, that sort of thing. You don't see that as a social ill, for example.
Well,
so you're just
because
you're a nihilist, dude.
I like the idea of like covenant communities. Hoppe talks a lot about like covenant communities where, like, kind of like the Amish, for example. The Amish are an awesome example of, if you want to live in that community with the Amish, you can, but you have to adhere to their social rules. They're pretty traditional on almost everything, and they're heavily religious. I think it should be, if I had me and my neighbor and a couple of others of us, start a community, for example, right? It's kind of a thing where you're not going to move to a place where you're not going to agree with everybody. You're going to be
born into it, though.
And you can move.
But if you're born into a family where your dad is a drug addict, don't you see that? Like, you even said that you viewed it as aggressing upon the children. So you just don't think that there should be any sort of convention or any sort of action or intervention there to prevent that mess from happening in the first place? Because I'm not saying that you personally should have to go around and clean up messes from drug dealers. I'm saying it's simple. Just pass a law saying you can't sell coke to people. Boom. Done. So, but it's actually more easy than it sounds. So,
I mean, cocaine's been illegal for a long time. Since
and I support the government, cracking down on it.
But wouldn't you agree that the war on drugs largely has failed?
Well, it hasn't been tried anywhere near as well as it could have. It's kind of like saying that.
What more would you like them to be able to do?
I'd like stiffer sentences for, dealers. I'd like to go in and deal with the drug cartels in Mexico. So I would actually support intervention in Mexico, for example. Now that's nowhere near as serious, though, as what's pressing against North Korea with the nukes or Iran and stuff. But it is a big issue. It is actually a security issue. They need to be taken down. They're literally like $1 billion industry. Where they profit off of fucking over young, mostly American people, and destroying families across the border, they've been begging for America to kick their ass for a long time. This idea that you just fight it within your own country, it's like, no, you need to go after these people wherever they are, whether it's Colombia, whether it's Mexico, whether it's Guatemala, anywhere, you know. So.
Well, I mean, we I think we really saw a ramp up of the modern American police during the Prohibition in like the 20s, right? That's when especially with the Prohibition, them enforcing it, we saw a massive increase in police funding. Now, you understand that when there's a market for something, and people are willing to pay a certain amount of money for a product, it's going to be supplied to them.
You could make that argument for assassins and hitmen. You could say, hey, man, there's a demand for putting out hits on people. Should that just be legal, bro? It's like, no, it shouldn't. Likewise with hard drugs.
You're comparing me buying a service to aggress and murder another individual to a chemical that
aggressive and it can sometimes murder another individual. That's right.
The chemical doesn't do that. It's the person. But
a lot of perfectly fine people that became addicted to these substances that had their lives ruined and their families' lives ruined. So a little bit of a simplification on your part there.
Oh my God. It's just, we saw this during the prohibition of alcohol, and we're seeing it now during the prohibition of most drugs. Prohibitions aren't going to work. I mean, like, again, if there's a market for a product,
with that attitude.
Okay, so stiffer sentencing. You put a person in jail for dealing coke, right? Someone's going to pop up behind him and start selling it again. Are you just going to indefinitely put people in prison?
Well, no, because I'm going to go to the source of the problem and straight up kick the ass of the drug dealers. Like, if I'm in charge, you can be damn well sure there's going to be a military presence in Central America going to the source of this stuff.
Right. So you're
going after people. Like, as long as you leave Mexico and these other countries to their own devices and this stuff goes on, you're constantly going to be doing whack-a-mole, where there's going to be another dealer and another dealer and another dealer, but they're always going to be in service of these hostile cartels beyond your border. For me, I'm an interventionist. I would go to the source of the problem, just as I would with terrorists, and hit them where their home is. So,
right. How does that? So we're just talking cocaine specifically. How does that help with like meth and heroin?
You can also go after those that will traffic that into the country, those that will produce that as well. Like, I mean, I'm talking about like all sort of like hard drugs at this point. So
right, but I mean, some of them are produced here in the States.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes people do produce them as well within your own borders, and you have your own domestic law code to go after those people.
Oh, this guy sounds like a stoner that doesn't want to pay taxes. Yeah, taxation is theft, bro.
Yeah, taxation is theft, bro. So my question for you is, how would roads exist in an anarcho-capitalist society? Just a simple question. How would roads exist? Free market,
really?
Right? Free
really?
market.
Huh?
Free market, bro?
Yeah. I like to resort to a video of the great musician Eric July of Backwards. Fuck those hoe-ass roads. People are able to decide where a fucking flat space between point A and point B, needs to go. We saw this actually. There was a road in Illinois that, or not Illinois, Iowa, that I think about 2,000 farmers were able to plow and create in under 2 hours. The state didn't do that shit, man. People coming together and being like, hey, we're going from here to there quite a bit. Maybe we should make it easier.
Okay, but you understand that doesn't work for like big, nationwide infrastructure projects and stuff like that. That no individual company would have the resources or will to fund, but that every company, their productivity goes up when you've got a big government initiative like that. I've got a question for you. Do you believe that negative externalities can emerge from a free market?
Meaning what?
Monopolization, meaning pollution, rampant pollution, meaning companies want to cut corners. So instead of putting seatbelts in the cars, we're just going to build cars without seatbelts, that kind of stuff. All kinds of externalities.
I'm pretty sure. So with the seatbelt things, I'm pretty sure companies were putting seatbelts in cars before they were required to.
Some of them luxury cars, yeah, but the idea is it shouldn't be a luxury. So
the thing with the market is, when you see a company that you buy shit from, and you have competition to buy in the market from other companies, for example, say you see company A that sells a fucking t-shirt, right? You need a t-shirt, and they're selling it for a cheap price, great product, but you see what they're doing. And they're just like pumping a bunch of pollution into the air, dumping the paint leftover shit into the water, just being an asshole to the environment, right?
Yep.
Then you got company B. Product is the same price, same quality, really good, but they are recycling their materials, and they are, making it, making sure they don't, put as much smoke into the air, right? They're not being an asshole. They're being a bro with the environment, right? Right.
Okay.
Which company are you going to buy from?
But you're not going to know which one's the bro. Well, you'll know who's the bro, but you won't know if the other guy is, because the other guy isn't going to be like, yeah, we're polluting the environment in their public press briefings. No, what they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, yeah, we're good for the environment too, when in reality they're doing all this crap. And if you don't have a regulator in charge to actually find them and get them in court or something, if you don't have a government there to enforce anything, they can just hide whatever they're doing. And unless you live in the locality of where they're dumping, if you live halfway across the country or something, you're not going to know. You're just going to see, oh, they both have environmental stuff and pictures of trees on their brand label. I'm going to buy, which, like, I'll just flip a coin at that point. That's the problem. Like, this is the problem with Ancaps, with anarchists at large, is that you guys don't have an actual systematic approach to counter externalities. You just rely on individuals knowing everything about the market. And you identify yourself as an Austrian economist. Even Austrian economists talk about information asymmetry. You'd have to admit that is a problem, that is an externality that emerges in the market. You admit that information asymmetry between the consumer and the producer is real, right?
Right.
So then how do you level that playing field so that the consumer can actually make an informed decision if there's no government there to hold companies to a standard? So how do you stop, for example, like if there's no SEC, how do you stop securities fraud, for example, if there's no regulatory body there? Because it seems like everything would go to shit because the consumer would have no way to know anything. And the companies would have nobody holding them to account or keeping them in check. It kind of seems like that society would be a shit show, even if somebody didn't invade it, because there'd be no military to defend it. So how do you stop that society from falling apart and becoming a cyberpunk, technocratic, corporate monopolist dystopia?
I got an answer for you.
Mm-hmm. Wait, you said you ain't got an answer, or you do?
I do not.
You don't have an answer. So that is another dub for the Hawk Gang. So we're just taking dubs tonight, honestly, for my side. The statist gang, the neocon gang, the Hawk Gang, whatever you want to call it. You don't have an answer. Okay, noted for the record. Okay, well, that was easy. I got a question for you. How did you even become an anarchist?
You want my little story?
Sure. Yeah, let's go.
I grew up in a conservative family. kind of boomer conservative, style Republicans voted for Trump in 2016.
Okay.
I was on that MAGA train. And then about 2018, I've always been kind of anti-war. I think war is pretty useless, especially when we've been in a place for, decades and nothing has been really achieved. But I became kind of an anti-Trump because of his airstrikes in Syria, more involvement in the Middle East. That 28 around.
Oh, that's all that I like him for, honestly.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. You like to bomb brown children? That's cool.
No, dude. So do you deny that Assad gassed people with planes that took off from that airbase that President Trump bombed? Well, that Shayrat airbase that President Trump bombed with Tomahawks in 2017, the aircraft that departed from there gassed kids. That was Assad gassed his own people. Do you deny that?
I'd have to read into it more.
Okay, well, I appreciate that answer because sometimes people just say, "Oh no, he didn't," and they'll cite Russia Today or something. You saying straight up, you have to do more research. Great, right. I welcome you to do more research. Wonderful. So, because you might see that Donald Trump made a good call there in punishing Assad for doing that. So,
I don't think I would.
But if you were getting gassed in the ass by Assad, you'd probably want some neoconservatism. So there's that.
You're right. And if my entire life U.S. bombers were dropping bombs on my home country, I would probably hate the U.S. afterwards.
Bombing ISIS is a little bit different than bombing your country. Yeah, they're in your country, but it's Russia that's actually barrel bombing civilians. To pummel the people into submission, basically. It's just funny to hear an anarchist take the side of the Kremlin and everything. Like I said, it almost seems like the neocon gang.
I'm not taking anyone's side. I've seen you do this before. You did this with who you believe is Ace, which I still find hilarious. Is like,
it doesn't matter if it's Ace.
He was saying, he was like, well, he didn't really support anybody, didn't care who had nukes or didn't support anybody really having them. And your response was, oh, Ace supports Iran having nukes. Like, yeah, it's like gotcha journalism.
Well, no, if you don't support stopping something, then it doesn't matter how you feel about that thing. For all intents and purposes, you are endorsing it. Your inaction.
No, I'm not. If I don't give a damn about the topic, why would I want to have an opinion on it?
Because inaction is action. Relativism is siding with the enemy.
It's not minding my own fucking business while someone does something around the corner. I don't have to have an opinion on it. I can just ignore it.
Yeah, but it's a little bit different if you have the capacity to intervene and you don't. That is
again, why do I have to? What reasoning do you have for that? What logical reasoning would you make that says that I have to go and intervene or have an opinion on everything? And if I don't have an opinion, I'm just ignoring the entire situation. Suddenly I'm just as bad in your mind as the people that are doing that bad action?
Well, I'm not saying that you're a Ba'athist. I'm not saying that you're like a card-carrying member of a
You said that
all that I'm saying is that there's no difference in the consequence of your actions between you not caring versus you singing the praise of Assad, because both of the consequences of that is non-intervention. So
maybe that's what I prefer.
Then maybe you prefer Assad gassing kids in the ass. So,
all right, yeah.
Because I've got a lot of criticisms of Donald Trump, but I'm not an ever Trumper. I do give him credit where credit is due. I think he actually deserves a lot of credit for what he did in Syria, because there were people on his own side, and there were losers like Tucker Carlson telling him, don't do anything, let Assad get away with it, otherwise that's the neocons. And Donald Trump was like, we can't really let him get away with it. I mean, look, I got a lot of criticism of Donald Trump. I don't really like the guy. But even he's like, look, we should probably do something about Iran. and Soleimani, and we should probably do something about Assad. Hell, there was a report out the other day talking about how in secret Donald Trump actually wanted to straight up assassinate Assad, and that it was like the anti-war people around him that kept him from doing it. So, you know. So, like, look, again, I got my criticism of Trump. It's just there were some things that Trump did that he deserves credit for. That's all I'm saying. So, but you can continue your story about anarchism, because you went from being like a Trump guy, MAGA, and all that kind of stuff to becoming an anarchist. I guess you were saying because you didn't like war. That's kind of what led you that.
That was my my biggest thing that kind of drove me away. Was I realized that the Republicans and the Democrats just kind of, they don't really have the intention to stop these wars anytime soon. And I kind of gave up on the Republican Party. Found actually just kind of came across like Ron Paul and Milton Friedman, and actually Thomas Sowell as well. And from them, I found, Mises, Hayek, and Rothbard. And then what actually moved me from a minarchist to an anarchist was Anatomy of the State.
Okay. Well, I like some.
Have you read that book?
I like some of Saul, and hell, I think that Milton Friedman's idea of negative income and whatnot, and it's not just him, but I like that. I support a negative income tax, for example. I think some of those guys are pretty cool. So, like I said, I think Thomas Sowell is somebody that, he should probably get more attention than he's received. When he's talking about the poverty trap of the welfare state, I think a lot of that's pretty good analysis. So,
okay. Yeah. Have you read Anatomy of the State?
No, I haven't.
I think you should, man. I think it would turn you into an Ancap.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying that if you were to say email me a PDF of you said Anatomy of the State, that's Anatomy of the State. I'm just going to look it up right now by Murray Rothbard.
The Mises Institute actually has a PDF and web version of it. You can get.
They've got a PDF. Oh, that's interesting. So
Yes.
if I were to, so what you're saying basically is if you were to send out a PDF of Rothbard to say people in say China, for example, you could get them to go from like being an authoritarian communist hellhole to being like an anarchist society. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like we could just like send PDFs to everybody of Rothbard. Is that?
I was already pretty much on the whole libertarian side of things. So I mean, obviously you're going to have some kind of conversion there. You can't just throw Rothbard at someone and they're instantly a libertarian. That's
okay. How about this? Let's say China invaded America.
Okay.
If America became anarchist society, and China invaded and everything, and it was like they were trying to force communism down everybody.
Right.
Would you get everybody together and send emails of PDFs of Murray Rothbard's work to people in China so that they would become anarchists? I
mean, you're going to need more than just Rothbard.
Okay, so we can throw in Mises too. Maybe like Mises PDFs and Rothbard PDFs. Would that do it?
Oh my God! Do we start teaching children about math with fucking algebra? I mean, you're asking me if we take people that aren't really fucking well versed in liberty or the ideas of liberty, and you just throw really advanced fucking economists at them? Seriously?
No. Okay. So this is a big meme. We're kind of just having fun with you right now.
Okay.
There was this Keith guy who said that if China invaded America, a stateless America could win the war because he'd just get people to email PDFs of Rothbard over to the people in China, and then they become anarchists. So you kind of did the meme in a little way. That's why we're having fun. That's why we're having fun, because you did the meme. But we can move on. I just thought that was super funny. I think a lot of people thought that was pretty funny. So
what? Is that the Empire State Building behind you?
That's correct. Yes, it's pretty based, right?
I like that. It's a cool tower.
Yeah, big building. I like what it symbolizes. Like
what's that?
Like the state and America and empire and all that kind of stuff. Pretty based.
Buildings.
Right? Buildings. I like buildings.
Yeah, buildings are cool. They keep us dry and.
Yeah, no, I like buildings. I like architecture. I wanted to be an architect when I was a kid, for example. So
it's awesome. What do you You said you majored in what in college?
Oh, I did a degree in economics and a degree in political science. I also did business stuff on the side as well. So.
Oh, okay. Neat.
What about you?
Huh? I didn't go to school. I work in IT.
Well, that's cool. You probably were able to avoid debt and everything. That's probably pretty smart.
That's correct.
That's good.
Yes, I'm a conscious person, financially conscious, that is. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's like wealth pill and all that kind of stuff. That's base. So
right. Cool. I think we had a constructive conversation here.
Yeah, I think people probably got a lot of stuff out of this. I think it was an interesting sort of discussion. What I will say is just that I would encourage you to look into Bashar al-Assad's chemical weapons usage against his own people in Syria. I'd also consider you to reflect upon your values of what made you an anarchist, and you talk about how you really don't like war and everything. I would implore you to consider the fact that war is a temporary, almost medical procedure and almost surgery against a cancer that, if left unchecked, will go on for millions of years. And that, yes, war is hell, but so is communism. At least the former is temporary. Likewise with fascism, likewise with Islamism, etc. I would say if you truly did despise the state and the state at large, you would recognize that the Western states are less evil compared to the other states out there, and we should probably go about, actually standing in solidarity and liberating our fellow man and woman from the real tyranny that exists out there. And then you can focus on reforms and stuff within here if you want. I do find it funny how it is oftentimes those that despise the state the most in the West that carry the most water for the states in the East, basically. So, but if you got any closing statements, feel free. So.
No, that's good. Go follow me on Twitter. I'm almost to 5,000, so.
How many are you following?
Huh?
How many people you follow?
I follow 2,324.
So about 2-to-1 ratio. Could be worse. Could be a lot worse.
Quite a few mutuals, Yeah.
But follow, bro.
Follow me.
I don't follow people unless they truly stand out. I only follow 99 or fewer people, right?
I haven't stood out for you.
You stood out. It's just, hell, there are like neocons and hawks and stuff that I don't even follow because they don't make the top 99 cut. So probably, Kim Jong-un stands out for me. I think the Ayatollah stands out for me, and yeah, you stood out too. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I encourage you to read Anatomy of the State by Rothbard.
Sure.
Yeah.
And encourage you to read Neoconservatism, Why We Need It by Douglas Murray. So there we go.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, yeah. Thanks for coming on and debating. Have a good night, everybody.